agenda item itself in terms of the importance of those other measures. Primarily the government's electric vehicle purchases, vehicle fuel efficiency standards, and setting a biofuel requirement. And at the time, I thought, well, maybe that's a lot to be putting on just kind of one policy initiative. But I went and had a look at the speech that James Shaw made, and that was just at the time of the release of the Climate Change Commission's final advice, and that was only just a couple of weeks ago. And sure enough, in that there's a very heavy concentration on a future that revolves around seeing cars charged overnight by renewables, people travelling to work in more efficient cars powered by cleaner fuels, incentivising the uptake of low emission vehicles, the Minister of Finance responded pretty quickly to that with 300 million. If you look at Rod Carr, it's very much a similar thing to do with the commentary on how the cost of electric car can be made accessible to those in our community who we know are going to struggle with it, because those operational costs, as anyone who knows who's got a hybrid, is way lower than the conventional fuel. So I guess the question is how do we get people over to those sorts of vehicles in meaningful numbers so that they can, A, contribute to emission reduction, but B, also be the beneficiary of greatly reduced operating costs, which are currently the domain of the relatively wealthy. The other point that Dr. Carr made that I think has particular relevance to us was his advice that a clearer divide in the modelling is required between town and country, acknowledging that not all communities or commuters in them have the same options for getting around. I don't know if we understand that sufficiently well in here in our commentary, because I think as much as he was referring to rural areas, we could draw a distinction between the outer suburbs. So we have parts of Auckland now who could be doing a lot more. Those are the parts of Auckland that have a lot more access to cycleways, to bus services, to trains. They should be disproportionately contributing more to the emissions reductions. The people further out, they have got increasing opportunities, but as still yet limited. So let's start with the people who have been the beneficiaries of considerable investment as of the moment. Councillor Bartley quite rightly referred to behaviour change. I don't necessarily think we can hold that all down to Auckland Transport. We've got a part to play in that, because I see from my relatively uninformed standpoint a lot of things that could be happening right now in terms of use of existing infrastructure that goes to walking. We have footpaths in most parts of Auckland. We have the potential for utilising road space. It's happened on Whangapara Road very successfully for minimal output. We have a whole lot of things we could be doing right now, and in fact it's the behaviour change that is required, that is not something that Auckland Transport can do off its own bat. It's got to need leadership from the government and also leadership from us. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the ability just to make a few comments, but thank you, I guess, in particular to the people who've worked on this for the last 15 months. I think it's a reasonably encouraging blueprint for our future, but as you've said, there is more to be done, and obviously in the very near future, the flexibility that we need to address this major problem in terms of climate change will need to be taken on a far more visible form from all parties, not just us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. I'll now go to Councillor Coon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to support the motion with some reservations, so I just would like to talk to that. But in terms of coming to this draft plan, I do think of this little fella on the front cover and whether what's actually in the plan is living up to his aspirations and what we need to be putting in place for Aucklanders now and future generations. I also just think of that in terms of my role, and I always think of my role and why I'm here is because I want to make Auckland a connected, healthy, sustainable, vibrant and inclusive place. And then looking at this plan, I think about the feedback that we got from our local boards, and I know there might be concerns about how the feedback was perhaps cut and diced or how you review it. But when you look at what our local boards told us, who are, they're really in touch with their communities and have really thought about their local board plans. Our local boards were incredibly in unison when they presented to us. They all covered the same themes. They might have highlighted some different projects, but they all wanted transport choice. They all wanted mode shift. They all wanted action on climate. They all wanted to be able to implement local solutions. They all had concerns around safety, equity. They all wanted a response to growth in housing. And I think that was a really holistic overview of Auckland and what they wanted to deliver. And thinking about the holistic well-being and livability of our city. So I think it's really important that this plan delivers on those aspirations. The reason why I have a lot of reservations is because there is such an incredible amount of work to do to align this plan with our own goals that we have set through Te Taruki a Tawhiri. Because when I think about the equity issues, and I thank you, Councillor Dalton, for talking to that report, which is central to our submission to the government, and it's great that we've incorporated that. When I think about the travel times of people doing 2-hour commutes around the city, the safety issues on our rural roads, the productivity concerns that we have, the impact on small businesses, transport, poverty, and all the external impacts on our communities of the current transport system, including pollution as well. All of that is the overlay of that is if we look to address our carbon emissions, we will be acting on all of those issues. And I think we really need to get aligned with what we have already agreed for our emissions reduction targets and our goals around mode shift and reducing vehicle transport kilometres. Because if we achieve that, we can achieve all these other benefits for our communities, and particularly productivity. So we know that reducing vehicles on the road, providing alternatives, will free up our roads for those who need to be there, in particular freight. And I don't think this plan, this RLTP is on the way there, but it's not fully aligned with where we need to be. And I'm glad the Mayor, thank you Mayor for doing the rundown of what is actually in the plan, because you can lose sight of that because there's a huge amount in there. And I guess this is why I want to support it, because I want to be part of that solution, because a lot of this is how we implement it, how we consider every roading project as an opportunity to meet the needs of our communities. And that's the same in terms of all the issues that we need to address, whether it's the trucks on the roads in Drury. We still got to address that issue, and we've just got to be part of the solution of how we do it, because we've just got to find a different way of doing that that isn't a $3.5 billion road. And I think also the plan itself on page 6 of the plan in the context, it actually says, Aucklanders tell us they are supportive of tackling climate change, yet the way to successfully execute the transition is both complex and unclear. It must be tackled using a systems and evidence-based approach and result in equitable outcomes. And I absolutely sign up for that with a regional approach. Also, just take on board what Councillor Bartley brings to the conversation around how we've got to socialise that change and bring people along, because there's huge opportunities there for making our communities safer, being able to get kids to walk to school. There are 40,000 kids who every day are driven under 5Ks by a parent who goes home again. 20% of the trips on the road are discretionary. 60% of trips on the road are under 5Ks. So we know that it's using the network that we've got more efficiently rather than just throwing more money at it. So I just wanted to make a final comment in terms of a huge amount hangs on E. This is why I'm happy to endorse the plan with the addition of E. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for working on that, because that is where we've really got to do a whole lot of mahi around how we're going to reprioritise and refocus and get all our goals aligned and what we need to achieve around mode shift and reducing vehicle kilometres travelled. So I will support for that reason, and I'm also heartened too by what we've put into the submission that we're making on the government's pathway. You know, we've all signed up to this. It's very ambitious, but I think it's good that we've got broad political support around the table to get on that pathway. And so I know there's going to be a lot more work ahead. But so for those reasons, I do commend this to members, and I'm happy to support the resolutions with those reservations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Coombe, and Councillor Hills, please.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm kind of gutted, really. I just feel kind of exhausted by the whole conversation because we keep signing up for things and then I guess we just don't get what it looks like going forward. I'm a bit... we keep arguing about like what people want and what people don't want. What I want is everyone to have all the options that, say, I have. You know, we seem to be like, oh, you can catch the bus, so you shouldn't talk about my community. I want every community to have the option that I have outside my driveway in the mornings, a bus every 10 minutes straight to my workplace, and I have choice, and it's easy and it's safe. You know, everyone said the Northern Busway would be a failure. It was pretty common knowledge it was going to fail when it was proposed, and it was predicting in 2013 to only have 1.2 million users for the year. In 2013, it had almost 3 million users for the year. In the 2019, just before COVID, it had 8 million users per year. And that wasn't because that community was desperately asking for buses or wanted to drive or could. It's because the infrastructure was provided and it slowly got progressively better. The places where we've put cycleways in, we've gone from 800,000 users on those cycleways and those areas a year in 2013 to almost 4 million cycle trips on those areas now. That they didn't magically come from nowhere. They came because they were put in place. We have 7,000 kilometres of roads across the city, and it's like under 100 kilometres of that have safe cycleways. People are still cycling on those roads, but it's just super, super unsafe. And we only, by this plan, increase safe cycling opportunities for our communities by about 200 kilometres over the next 10 years. It's still a very small slice of what we can do. So I'm not saying, you know, I'll just give a quote from, we can't just build our way out of this problem in the long run. It's not possible to keep adding lanes to the motorways. It becomes more and more expensive and for less and less gain. Now that quote was from Simon Bridges as Transport Minister when he launched ATAP in 2016-17. He recognised at that time that it was impossible to help change the city without really shifting mode shift. And so I guess when I look at what we've had announced on Eastern Busway, you know, we know that Howick Botany Eastern area is desperate for choice. And now we've just pushed that choice out a little further. We know that Councillor Cooper and Councillor Henderson are desperate for a busway because it gives choice. I'm pretty sure a bunch of people out west would take the bus if they could, but it is absolutely painful for most of those people to sit in a bus on the motorway in the same traffic as all the vehicles. So there is work to be done, and there's lots being done. Puhunui Station and others is going to make huge difference to those communities, but I just want more, and I want to know how we get more. And I think we're also setting up Auckland Transport to fail because we're setting them expectations to do the same thing with the same money. And the government is going to be directing us within a year after the Climate Commission directs them to change things dramatically. Because I'm worried that all our communities, when petrol prices hit record amounts in 5 to 10 years' time, because the whole world is changing. The UK is banning petrol and diesel cars from 2030. The EU is going to be doing the same. We will not have opportunities to purchase cars from any market probably in that time. And it's not going to be everyone switching to EVs because we know it's expensive and we know EVs still create congestion. So I guess I don't know if I want to support this because I feel like we're still setting up a 10-year plan for our communities to fail and the world is going to change ahead of us once again. So I don't exactly know what the answers are, but I just feel like we don't have the options or tools when we've been asking for them. It's not just about reducing emissions, it's about giving people options, the same options I have every morning outside my front door. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walker, please.
I'll be supporting this. Councillor Newman reminds me of the many meetings that I engaged with on the Northern Busway Committee and the constant questions I raised about the inadequacy of what was being provided at that point, the battles that I had with Rodney District Council to get them to buy the land for the busway station up in Silverdale, which was a mammoth effort in itself, I can tell you, against a background where most of them didn't really know much about buses. Thought it was totally irrelevant. But I've got real concerns yet again that obviously we're voting on something and we're investigating all of these things. If we benchmark ourselves against other cities around the planet, we're just woeful in respect of how far behind we are, and increasingly we need to do that. I have certainly concerns around what sort of value for money we're getting out of our investment in Auckland Transport across a number of things. Increasingly, we need to be a regulator and asking many more questions around that. I have no idea. All I know is a list of projects with some costs, and other cities I know deliver more economically and far quicker than us. And along with Councillor Watson, I'm really emphatic that we need to be driving behavioural change as a council. That is what other cities are doing much more aggressively than we are, against the background where there are probably more people buying bigger cars and SUVs and driving them around, and obviously that's hitting the news all the time. So look, I'm going to go along with this, but I've got ongoing reservations around how we're tracking, frankly.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Mulholland, please.
Thanks, Chair. Nice to have a say on behalf of the people I represent and as a regional councillor. First of all, I'd like to thank the team, and whilst it's often said that, again, a councillor who has not been here in a term before shouldn't raise it, I am well and truly going to raise the matter of how many times we have met to discuss this issue and to debate it from my perspective. So if we ain't made it today, then I'm concerned about what we're really doing. So thank you that we are coming to this point of conclusion, because I feel everyone has had an opportunity to input. So I really want to acknowledge Auckland Transport and the staff at Council and Chair, you, for doing that, giving everyone an opportunity for the lengthy debate. And I also would like to acknowledge the Deputy Mayor for having the discussions he's had to have with regards to supporting some of the projects. With regards to Councillor Newman's statement on Mill Road, I'm going to add my name to that just as a note. You know, one might say I come from a small area and I am one councillor for one ward. I just want to note that I don't see a lot for my ward in this plan, and I haven't complained bitterly, because we're a collective and we collaborate and we work together. So I just want to note that for other councillors that are listening to me, and I'm guessing some of you probably won't be because it is near the end of the day. I do want to acknowledge government has supported and funded a lot of these projects, but I also want to say we really should not be, and I've just heard it from Councillor Walker, which is fine, it's a view and opinion. Maybe we do need to change behaviour, but I just want to say I'm not a dictator, so I don't want to dictate to people how to live. I want to work together, and it's not that's not a criticism, that's just a note on if we're going to drive behaviour, it's about working together, not dictating to people whether they've got a SUV, a UV or whatever, because I actually am not one who is a huge supporter of the changes that government is putting into place with regards to the climate change, so I'll be buying a SUV soon on that basis. Just with regards to a couple of other things, I am grateful that we have a transit-oriented development project in Newland, but I just want to note this. It ain't perfect, okay? We still have people trying to get a bus to Newland. We have got people parking everywhere, Chair. We have also got issues there. But I want to acknowledge how grateful I am that for many years, when I worked at the old Waitakere City Council, and maybe I am showing my age, but you know, we worked tirelessly with many agencies, government and many local people to get that fabulous project, and I'm grateful for that. But it is not perfect and it is not working as well as what it could be. But it is working to some degree because people are using the public transport, because it's a great facility. They are using the buses, they are using the trains, so that's just outstanding. And just to end, because I had contemplated whether I would speak or not today on this matter, I was out walking a couple of nights ago at 8:30 in the evening around the streets of my area, doing a little delivery. I felt quite safe. It was actually very interesting, and one of the things I thought as I walked down Blockhouse Bay Road, I thought to myself, I am so lucky this is a great footpath. Now, wait a minute, all my residents may not, or the residents may not agree with that, but I will say it was a great footpath. It felt safe, it was well constructed, and I am acknowledging that additional funding is going into things like footpaths, but I do want to say it felt good, because I think, again, in debate against what some others have said, I actually think we're living in a fabulous city that has got great infrastructure, considering government gets quite a lot of our funding. And I think, you know, when I was reading the LTP last night, they get quite a bit of funding, and you look at the GDP and what they're taking from us, I think we're doing incredibly well. We can always do better, there is no doubt, but I want to acknowledge those good things. I do want to say that I do also acknowledge the representation, Chair, through Auckland Transport when I need to put into things like this or to share information. It is taken on board, and because I'm new, I go a different way about it. I talk with people directly. So I want to acknowledge the staff that have assisted me at Auckland Transport. But I do think as a city, I believe we're doing well. Sure, we can do better, but let's face it, we are a huge city that has had years of underinvestment, and that is not the fault of everyone sitting at this table. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor Mulholland. That draws us to the end of the debate, so we'll close the debate and we'll go to the vote. And I think the motions are clear, they're before us, and we'll take it on the voices. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And to the contrary, please say no. To the contrary, say no.
No.
Okay, there is a one, and I hear the voice of Councillors Young, and I think it was Councillor Fletcher, was it, or Councillor Stewart? Councillor Stewart. Okay, thank you. So we'll record those two votes of dissension on the motions. And members, we have no extraordinary business, and that draws us to the conclusion of this extraordinary meeting of the Planning Committee. Thank you to you all.